Yes. Is it working? Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. We're still waiting for the High Commissioner, but on human rights. But I think we will start because we are also online. So I was supposed to say to you at this moment, but you're doing it without me saying it, for all of us to be a moment of being quiet for a second so that we can start online. I need somebody to tell me whether we are online. We good? Yeah, okay, good. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to UNAIDS and welcome to this event and welcome to everyone who's watching online for this World AIDS Day event where we're launching our World AIDS Day report. I'm Christine Stecheling, I'm the UNAIDS Deputy Executive Director. I'm standing in for our Executive Director, Winnie Byanyima, who will address us this afternoon, but unfortunately won't be able to be in the room with us. So this is the time of the year as we're approaching World AIDS Day, where we remember all of those that we have lost to HIV, to AIDS, and where we recommit as a community, as a global community, to enabling everyone living with HIV to have access to the treatment they need, and to preventing new infections, and to ending AIDS as a public health threat by 2030. Today, we're really excited to launching our World AIDS Day report with a message of hope and a message of action. We can end AIDS if we follow the right path. And for those of you who know a little bit about me, you will know how personally exciting that is to having a theme around human rights. 25 years ago, when I started my work on HIV in Botswana, I founded an organization that was solely there to promote HIV and human rights, because even at that time, in a country with a very, very high impact of HIV, we knew that we would never win the fight against HIV unless we protected the human rights of everyone. So I'm particularly delighted to be here and to be launching this report. We have an inspirational set of conversations. So it's a set of conversations. It's not just one. So I hope you're all ready and happy to go and listen to a variety of speakers that are all coming from very different perspectives to this event and to this theme. And I'm especially delighted to introduce our host for today, the wonderful CNN correspondent, Larry Madowo. And I will hand over to Larry, who will be our MC for the evening. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, wow, 2 people responded. We will try that again. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're getting there. That's amazing. We're going to have a vibrant conversation this afternoon, so I'm going to need some energy in this room. Sounds good? I came from Nairobi, so that's not the applause I expected. That's the applause you give somebody who crossed the road to get here, not somebody who crossed an ocean or 2 to get here. No, seriously, my name is Larry Madowo. You guys are fantastic. Can I just take you everywhere? Everywhere I go, you just applaud before I speak? That would be wonderful. I'm excited to be leading this conversation this afternoon. We have a series of conversations. We'll hear perspectives from around the world, from Brazil, from Mexico, from Spain, from Burundi, from South Africa, and everywhere in between. But to begin, like you heard, unfortunately, Winnie Byanyima cannot be with us this afternoon, but she sent us a message, and I would like to show you that right now.
Hello, greetings from Kampala, Uganda. I'm sorry not to be with you today, but thank you all for joining the launch of the World AIDS Day report, which is Take the Right Path to End AIDS. Thank you also to my distinguished fellow panelists who are heroes of the HIV response. Thank you for your courage, your commitment, and your collective action. And thank you, Larry, our wonderful moderator. I am one of your many, many fans who watch you on CNN, and today you're in the hall and online with us. We can end AIDS if everyone's rights are protected. We have come so far in the HIV response. The progress that we have made has been driven by biomedical advances and by advances in the protection of human rights. But big gaps in the protection of rights still remain, and they are keeping the world from getting on the path that ends AIDS. Last year, 1.3 million people around the world were newly infected with HIV, 3 times higher than the global target that was set for 2025 of no more than 370,000 people. Of the 40 million people living with HIV, more than 9 million are still not accessing life-saving treatment. Last year, 630,000 people died of AIDS-related illnesses. And in at least 28 countries, the number of new infections is on the rise. To bring down the trajectory of the pandemic, it is imperative that life-saving programs can be reached without fear by all who need them. To get on track to end AIDS, leaders will need to uphold the human rights of everyone living with and at risk of HIV. When girls are denied education, when there is impunity for gender-based violence, when people can be arrested for who they are or who they love, when a visit to health services is dangerous for people because of their gender, the result is that people are blocked from care. This drives the AIDS pandemic. We will only succeed when everyone can get the medicines and support they need without fear. Laws, policies, and practices that punish, discriminate against, or stigmatize people obstruct them from HIV prevention, testing, treatment, and care. So too do policies and practices that block health workers or peer counselors from doing HIV outreach or advocating for reforms. Only rights can fix these wrongs. We must remove criminal and other laws that harm people's rights. We must enact laws and approaches that protect the human rights of everyone. And it is crucial that we foster societal respect for everyone's human rights. Acceptance, respect, and care are critical for HIV programs to work. Policies that punish, stigmatize, and exclude must be replaced with those that empower, protect, and heal. The AIDS response is at a crossroads. Upholding the human rights of everyone is not just a moral imperative, it is the path that ends AIDS. Let us walk this path together.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that message. And to help explain why human rights are essential to ending AIDS, I'm very excited to bring to the stage two gentlemen here, Volker Turk, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, and joining him on the stage is Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the World Health Organization Director General. Welcome. Thank you both for joining us here as we take the rights path. And I think Winnie Byanyima laid out the imperative about how human rights are connected to ending AIDS. So it is not a stretch to see you on the stage. You're somebody who lives and works around ensuring the rights of everyone around the world. Draw that connection between your work and the fight to end AIDS, HIV/AIDS in the world.
So I'm really excited to be here, and I'm excited that it's the right take the rights path, which is really music to our ears because it talks precisely about the interrelationship of health and health areas and indeed the fight to combat AIDS and HIV, and what it means to mainstream human rights in whatever is done on that front. And I think the story of AIDS really tells us a human rights story. It tells us the human rights story of solidarity first and foremost, but also on the shadow side of fighting discrimination, fighting stigma, and fighting bigotry. And I think it's absolutely clear that the only way, and we know this from the evidence that UNAIDS has been championing over almost 30 years now, the only way to actually overcome this AIDS and HIV is to have a rights-based approach, because it would mean the ending of punitive laws, it would mean the end of discrimination, it would mean inclusivity and participation of affected communities, but it also would bring forth a very strong gender dimension and a gender equality dimension. And we know how important this is. And I think it's almost a microcosm of human rights in many ways, because those governments, societies that take the rights path, which is why I love this so much, are the ones that are going to be successful. And so, yes, this is music to our ears, and I can only commend UNAIDS for having promoted this for a long time and making it so visible, especially at this very critical juncture, where we also see a tendency of an anti-rights agenda become very visible. And we know that discrimination and stigma and punitive laws kill. They are the ones, they are the real killers, and we need to fight them.
And so the fight is against this anti-rights agenda that is becoming common around the world.
It's to make sure that everyone understands human rights at their core, the right to health. What does it actually mean when it comes to an all-encompassing, and we have been discussing this with Dr. Tedros and WHO, because at the fundamental core of it is the fact that you have the right to health. What does it mean when it comes to budget decisions and reallocation of budgets within the finance ministry, for example? What does it mean for sexual and reproductive health rights? What does it mean in combating HIV/AIDS? And what does it mean to ensure that, and that's really the issue on the anti-rights agenda, that suddenly we see discrimination become acceptable again. And we really need to counter this, and we need to come with the evidence and make sure that that evidence informs the policymakers, informs populations at large, and make sure that this becomes the policy that is there to precisely aim at guaranteeing the right to health for everyone.
Thank you. And Dr. Tedros, ending AIDS is not just a health challenge, it's a test of the world's commitment to human rights.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. I think there should be a communication problem. I need to be honest with you. So I was told to come, open the meeting, speak, and leave, because I have another commitment which is a bit urgent, which I cannot move. I wish I could be
here. You have to go in like 5 minutes.
So I will read what I prepared.
Yes.
I think that would be fair also for my speechwriter. So, High Commissioner Volker Turk, Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, let me begin by saying I'm sorry Winnie can't be with us today, and I send my best wishes to her and her family, especially to her husband. And thank you, High Commissioner, for joining us today. And I hope the Ugandan government will do everything to release Winnie's husband. Health and human rights have always been closely intertwined. The WHO Constitution, which entered into force in 1948, was the first instrument of international law to affirm that health is a fundamental right for every person without distinction. Human rights are important in the response to all diseases, but that's especially true in the case of HIV. Marginalization, criminalization, and discrimination against key populations has fueled transmission and cost lives. We have come a long way in reducing these barriers and expanding access to tools for prevention, diagnosis, and treatment. But these gains are at real risk, and reductions in new infections and deaths have stalled. While nearly 30 million people are now on antiretroviral treatment, another 9 million need treatment and are not getting it. More than half of those, nearly 5 million, are still unaware that they are living with HIV. More new infections are occurring outside of Africa. The majority of these new infections are among key populations and their partners. With the 2030 global goals looming, we need to support the transition to a sustainable, country-owned response over the next 5 years. That means increasing access to affordable testing, prevention, and treatment services, including the new long-acting injectables for pre-exposure prophylaxis. We're facing these challenges in a difficult environment, with funding cuts for many global health programs, including HIV. Of course, we need more resources, but at the same time, we must learn to do more with less, to be creative, innovative, and agile. That makes a human rights focus all the more important. The biggest impact and the best return on investment is by focusing on the populations most at risk, men who have sex with men, people who inject drugs, transgender people, and prisoners. Together, this World AIDS Day, let's take the right path. Let's take rights path. I thank you, and Larry, back to you. And I hope I will be allowed to disappear.
You are allowed to. Thank you so much, Dr. Tedros. I know the High Commissioner has to leave as well. Thank you both for coming to begin this conversation for us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best. Thank you.
Okay. I also want to hear some interventions from the floor real quick. And we have the Ambassador Noel White, the permanent representative of Ireland, in the crowd. If you look at the report, we've got an essay from the President of Ireland. We're grateful for Ireland's support. Ambassador White.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to take the floor today, and thank you for organising the event. And best wishes, of course, to Winnie. It's a great pity that she couldn't be with us. No, look, it's a privilege just to have this opportunity to say a few words, and there's nothing that I could say in terms of the Irish experience around this that would, or the Irish response to this, that would really differ from anything that anybody else in this room would see as their own responses to it. But I want to take the opportunity nonetheless to say that we are deeply attached, of course, to this idea of upholding everyone's human rights as essential to the success overall of the HIV response. And this is something that our President put into sharp focus in the essay that he was very pleased to be asked to contribute to the excellent report. There is no doubt that as we work to, if we were to continue to work towards the targets set by the by SDG 3, these Sustainable Development Goals, that's health and well-being for all, that it is going to require a human rights-based approach if we were to arrive at our target. It's a priority for Ireland, it's a priority for the international community. In our case, we have it's hardwired into our development policy, and it becomes a guiding principle, and particularly within that, a guiding principle of reaching the furthest behind first, which is something which informs what we do, because the reality is that those who are at highest risk of HIV/AIDS are often the furthest behind. They're amongst the most vulnerable, the most marginalized of all communities, and our focus, of course, it has to be on measures to ensure that their rights in terms of prevention and indeed care services are also met. It can be achieved if a human rights-based approach is upheld, if unfair and harmful laws, and there are many of them, are removed, and if the kind of stigma and discrimination and violence that we see around this area are tackled effectively. We're facing, of course, gender-based inequalities, which are pervasive at this point, in our view. We're facing punitive laws being imposed against people with HIV/AIDS, and gender-based violence is continuing to proliferate. And against that very challenging backdrop, the importance of sustaining progress against HIV/AIDS cannot be ignored. The need is stark. As I said, our president, Michael D. Higgins, penned an essay for the report, highlighting this whole point of interconnectedness and addressing this question of the challenging the stigma and the discrimination and the inequalities before us. It must remain high on the international agenda. This is something which is blindingly obvious, but needs to be said nonetheless, particularly as it competes with multiple concurrent global crises that compete for attention and have the effect, therefore, of pushing HIV/AIDS down the international agenda. We will continue to take what we're now calling the rights path. It's difficult to pronounce, but we get there. It's the least of our problems. We can manage that. But in order to ensure that dialogue and engagement are informed by, let's be clear about this, reliable, science-based facts and information that helps to put the furthest behind first and at the center of our work. And thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for organizing this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Noel White. We'll also hear from Ambassador Clara Cabrera, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Spain, who's here at the front.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on the commemoration of this very important day. Congratulations also to all the team of UNAIDS for the publishing of the report, but above all, for all the daily work with civil society organizations, with patients, with the world as a whole to fight HIV and to fight stigma against HIV. So Spain proudly stands as a partner with UNAIDS. It has been there for a long time, and we will still be there in the fight against HIV-related stigma and discrimination. And I would also like to thank UNAIDS for having a very important Spanish representative from CECIDA, Oliver Marcos, that's here in one of the panels, and that I think it's also a very important sign of how committed Spain is to fighting against HIV, not only as a government, but also as a society. We have a society that's fully committed, that has a strong solidarity to those people that are patients or are victims of HIV, but also for those that are fighting against discrimination. Spain is therefore also a partner to the Global Partnership for Action to Eliminate HIV-related Stigma. And we will also like to seize this opportunity to invite other countries and other partners to join this global partnership, because we understand that it is addressing those prejudices and that stigma is crucial to ending HIV, because as a public threat. And why? Because that stigma really hinders access to prevention, access to care, and it hinders also progress towards 2030 agenda and to advancing global health as a whole. So I would like to invite all those countries and partners that would like to join this global effort. And finally, I would like also to underline what has already been told. This is a human rights issue. This is a human rights challenge, and we are very much willing to work with all the partners in this sense. Therefore, Spain is ready to keep working with UNAIDS and to support financially, but also politically, those efforts that are carried out around the world. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ambassador Cabrera, and thanks for your support. As you may have noticed, we have a few more chairs here because we're expanding this conversation and starting to hear from some of those global perspectives I mentioned at the top. So this one is titled "The Right to Health for All." We can all agree everyone has a right to health. And I'm excited to bring to the stage Nomonde Ngema, she's an inspiring youth HIV activist from South Africa. She's a big deal on TikTok. Please give a big round to Nomonde. Love it. Nomonde, did you pay some people in the crowd?
Yes.
Keep that same energy, great energy. Alexander Kami, head of HIV services at Geneva University Hospitals here in Switzerland. Ooh, Team Geneva came through. I love it. Axel Bautista, community engagement manager at Impact Global Action from Mexico City. And finally, last but not least, Ambassador Cecilia Shitani, the Deputy Permanent Representative from Brazil. Thank you all so much for joining us here to discuss the rights for all to have healthcare. And I want to start with you, Nomonde, because you're staying closest to me. And you are bringing this message to TikTok, to younger audiences. You're only 21, and you have become a very visible advocate and shining light. You are HIV positive, and you are bringing this message to the world. Tell me about your story.
Thank you, Larry. Hi. Hi.
Hey,
Okay.
yeah, it's working, it's working.
Okay.
Mhm.
Hi, everyone. My name is Iba Nomonde Ngema. I'm from South Africa, and 21 years ago, I was born. 7 years later, I find out I'm living with HIV. Like, dang it. And then as I grew up, I understand that this condition is like really painted with a lot of misunderstandings and stigma, especially. So today, as we're having this conversation, I want to refocus our minds to human rights, which is the fundamental aspect today, not just sympathy for me just because I'm living with HIV, but really human rights. Because of human rights, I am alive. Because of human rights, I have access to education. I'm educated. I have access to healthcare facilities, and I go and I receive the care that I need. Yet still today, there are still some barriers that people living with HIV face. I mean, other people still face like barriers in healthcare and education still. Yet we still also face like barriers and discrimination. Like people can still feel the need to like discriminate us, which is not okay because it just expands the stigma, and we then live in shame, and we just cripple in that fear that what can people do to us then. But because of these rights, we know people cannot physically harm us, although they can say things to us still like, you should be killed, you should be dead, or you should be marked a certain way because you're living with HIV, which hurts because you're also just a person. And so today, when I saw this year's theme, I thought it's very necessary, and I'm so glad that it came for such a time when I've heard these words being said to me, because protecting human rights, it's not just about protecting people who are just living with HIV. It's about making sure that the values that make us human are protected. Equality, respect, and dignity, we deserve all of that, and our status should not we should not be isolated from society just because we're living with HIV. And so I've used my online community to basically bring hope, to basically be that for other people, because I needed someone who I could look up to like this when I was younger. So I know that whatever they face, whatever fears they face, the trauma, the heartbreak, the rejection, everything, I know that I've went through it, and I know how I can help them go through it. But it's not enough. We need leaders and everyone else to take the right path. And although we all can say leaders must take the right path, we also have a role to play. It needs to start at home, in your friendship circles. Our languages need to change. We need to be more compassionate in our speech, because the leaders, they do it, but we also have a role to play. And I just want to emphasize on that, because it's what a parent has said to a child that has broken them. So everyone comes into play when it comes to, taking the right path and ensuring that people living with HIV live their fullest life, and they can dream, they can have dreams, they can want to work abroad, they can have families, they can have the rights and the freedom to do all of that, but we all have a role to play in ensuring that they can dream. Even just to dream for us is a lot. So I can't wait to see a world where our dreams are actually realized, where every young person living with HIV has the freedom to dream beyond their boxes. They're happy, they're living their lives to the fullest without fear of stigma and discrimination. Thank you.
Wonderful. Alexandra, I want to pick up exactly where she left about stigma and discrimination. You encounter this as a physician, as a researcher, as a caregiver, that even working here in Geneva, the stigma and discrimination still does exist in this world. The microphone there.
Right here. Yes, of course. And in a recent conference, we decided to do the opening ceremony based on stigma and discrimination. And the reason why we did that is that we highlighted that stigma also affects healthcare providers, regardless of their level of training or where they practice. And it is leading patients to avoid healthcare. And even here in Geneva, where I live, you said some everywhere in between. This is Switzerland. So this is from where I am. We have sometimes issues to find a gynecologist for women. We have issues to find a dentist for patients. So these are day-to-day issues that we face every day in our provider's life. And so I can just understand how difficult it is for the patient. And I, as a healthcare provider, I think it is also our responsibility or duty to combat these harmful practices in healthcare settings. Yeah, okay. So what else I wanted to add here is that in the year 2024, there has been marked by a true revolution in HIV prevention. And here I weigh my words carefully, a revolution comparable to the breakthrough of combination therapies in 1996. Indeed, studies have shown that 2 annual injections can almost completely protect a population of young women at high risk of acquiring HIV in sub-Saharan Africa. And this advancement is remarkable in a field where no vaccine is currently available, nor at sight for the next 5 years, let's say, even if we don't know. So this revolution in prevention deserves to be celebrated, supported, and we want everyone to have access to it. But I think this revolution should not hide the need to further adjust and develop treatment and prevention strategies until everyone finds the right option for him or her. So one option may not fit for everyone at the same time. So finally, let me just use this World AIDS Week, I would say, or day, as an opportunity to bring attention to the ongoing challenges of an epidemic we sometimes tend to forget. It tends to be invisible HIV. So the healthcare model must really evolve. Everywhere we hear that we should integrate patient follow-up into routine care structures, and this seems to be very appealing, but there is really this risk of HIV invisibilization. So ensuring access for key population, for treatment, as you said, testing, prevention, follow-up services must remain a priority for healthcare system everywhere in the world. And so let's not succumb to the AIDS fatigue. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. And Axel is here from Mexico City, one of my favorite cities. And you are a champion out there. You've been on the radio. You are on the big media platforms, telling your story unapologetically, but also being an inspiring figure for so many other people. How did this work find you? Tell us your story.
Thank you very well. Hola, hello. Well, first of all, I want to share to you that I'm wearing this T-shirt that says Sidoso.
Yes, sure.
So Sidoso is actually, in Spanish, Sidoso is a slur that is used to humiliate and discriminate people who live with HIV. It basically means that we are dirty, that we are immoral, that we are perverts. And today I'm just wearing this T-shirt with pride because I think this is an opportunity to show to the world that we need to celebrate who we are, that we need to celebrate, or in my case, I need to celebrate the gay I am, the sex I have, the pleasure I have. And I think that's important, and that's a beautiful message that we need to show and we need to give to the world and to the rest of people who are living with HIV. I understand that many people are afraid of showing themselves because society is always telling us that we get HIV because we deserve it, because we were looking for it, because they blame us. And I think speaking up and shouting out to the world that I don't care, that I'm still gonna be here, that I exist, that I deserve to have my rights respected, that I deserve to have the right to health, the right to housing, the right to a job. It's important, because if we leave people who live with HIV to the end, I mean, we're not going to end this epidemic. We need to include everyone. We need to include queer people, trans people who live with HIV. We need to include Black people who live with HIV. We need to include everyone. And I think that's one of the messages that I want to share to the world. I'm working with EMPACT, and EMPACT is a global organization. We are advancing in health rights, in human rights for people living with HIV. And for this December 1st, we are organizing something which is called Besoton Sidoso. And I want to explain a little bit to you why we are organizing this, especially in Mexico, in a city which is called Guadalajara, it's a very conservative city. And for us, it's very important to do this Besoton. Besoton means kissing thon, you know? So it's just like people gathering in the public space to retake the public space and to kiss each other in front of everyone. So the main message is to show to the world that HIV is not transmittable with a kiss or with a hug, you know? That's the first message. And the second message is to tell, especially people living with HIV who are there outside, hidden, afraid of showing, of being visible, that there is a community for them, that they are not alone, and that they deserve to be treated as well as any other person in the world, and that we deserve to have the right to pleasure, the right to sex, and the right to enjoy ourselves. So I'm very excited about it because, I mean, I'm working with EMPACT, and for me, it's sort of like, oh yeah, I'm doing the Besoton and everything, blah, blah, blah. But we're organizing this activity with some folks living in Guadalajara. And the other time, one of them was like, Axel, can I talk to you? And I was like, yeah, sure, you can talk to me. And he was like, you don't imagine, Axel, how powerful and how beautiful it is for me, I mean, for that person, as a gay person living in Guadalajara, to retake this word, to be part of this organization, of this activity, sorry, and to be in my city with my friends, holding hands, kissing each other, and saying, we deserve to be alive. We exist, we are resisting, and we are here. So for me, it was beautiful because sometimes working as an activist becomes, I don't know, like many activities, you do this, you go to this other meeting, you go to the radio, you go to every other interviews, but you sometimes forget, and we shouldn't forget that, how powerful and the impact that it has in people that are there on small villages, that are on the peripheria, that live in the global south, and that they are struggling every day to be here alive. So so I think that's the beautiful message about it. That's why I wanted to wear this today here at UNAIDS. Thank you, UNAIDS, for having me here. And you're very welcome if you want to go to Mexico. Mi casa es tu casa. Thank you.
So, Axel, how big is your house? Because there's about 150 of us. So we're coming, you have 150 bedrooms, we can all come in?
We can always try to fit everyone. Like, todo cabe en un jarrito sabiéndolo acomodar. We say that in Spanish.
Right, thank you. Ambassador Ishitani, Brazil is a big supporter of the work that UNAIDS does, and it's great to have you on this panel today. We talk about the right to health for all. Your thoughts listening to their lived experiences, the view from the physician and the caregiver, and how you play in.
Hi, Larry. Good afternoon. It's a great satisfaction to be here today, joining this wonderful event on the occasion of World AIDS Day. The last mile is the most difficult one, so this is why it's important to be here today, discussing a subject of highest importance also for Brazil. Well, many of you might know, but Brazil has been at the forefront in the fight against HIV/AIDS. We were the first country in the world to offer free treatment for HIV/AIDS patients. In fact, we have the largest universal health system in the world, and the right to health is constitutionally guaranteed. Sound public policies have been implemented since the 90s, aiming at increasing our production capacity, including technological cooperation and price reduction, so as to make available for free the most innovative tools for HIV prevention, diagnostics, and treatment. To share a number with you, currently around 900,000 people are under treatment in Brazil, and annually a budget of around $500 million is allocated for HIV/AIDS fight. Our legislation also protects the privacy of patients with HIV. And since 2014, any kind of discrimination is legally criminalized. So as the last mile is the most difficult one, what has been Brazil doing recently? Well, in April last year, Brazil launched the program Brasil Saudável is Healthy Brazil. That was an interministerial committee that was created, involving 14 ministries, Ministry of Education, of Women, for racial inclusion, for indigenous peoples, and it aimed at the elimination of social determined diseases. And of course, HIV/AIDS was one of diseases included. The day after tomorrow, a specific plan for the elimination of AIDS until 2030 will be announced, with a specific focus on vulnerable people. All ministries involved will offer a special solution for a specific group. The idea is to further reduce stigma and enhance the whole of government and whole of society approach. To share recent advances, last year, mortality rate among infected people was reduced by 6.5% in Brazil. Internationally, our contribution to the last mile has been done through engagement with other health organizations, such as UNITAID, which promotes innovation and equitable access, complementing UNAIDS advocacy. In the Human Rights Council, in the last session, Brazil was the pen holder. We led a resolution entitled Human Rights and in the Context of HIV/AIDS, which recognize the centrality of human rights in the HIV response. Having Portugal, Colombia, and Thailand as co-sponsors, it was possible through much dialogue with civil society, governments, also with the help of UNAIDS, to finally approve a resolution that was approved by consensus. This is really an important achievement. And also an important sign of international support to advance the fight against HIV/AIDS from a human rights perspective. Also, during the G20 presidency, G20 health ministers in Brazil reaffirmed their commitment to end the epidemics of AIDS in a framework of sustainable and resilient health systems that is clearly stated in paragraph 8 of the Ministerial Declaration of the G20. Brazil is also part of the Global Council on Inequality, AIDS and Pandemics, an initiative launched by UNAIDS. The Council gathered on the margins of the G20 Leaders Summit this November and calls global attention to the fact that inequality is a main driver of pandemics. Our Minister of Health in Brazil, Minister Nízia Trindade, is not only a supporter, but she's also a founder member of this council. To conclude, if on the one hand, the HIV experience has proved how global solidarity can change the trajectory of an epidemic, on the other hand, the resurgence of discriminatory policies and the lack of funding remind us that political and financial support remain as needed as never. This is why reinforcing human rights and the provision of resilient health system is so important. So I congratulate again UNAIDS for this initiative. UNAIDS has been a crucial partner in this fight, and thank you for gathering us today. I also thank so much the opportunity to be here and reaffirm Brazil's full engagement in the fight against HIV/AIDS, which has proved to be a protracted and fully fightable pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's a fully fightable pandemic. Nomonde, coming back to you. I love your TikTok because it brings so much joy. It's such a bright ray of sunshine, and people cannot know, people are not familiar with your story, don't know the personal toll you've had to deal with by coming out as somebody who's living with HIV, and the friendships lost, the relationships lost. What can you share with us in that way?
Oh, okay. So the most I've heard of HIV when I was growing up was don't tell anyone, right? And so when I got to primary, I had this amazing group of friends, and we had a tradition that we had just invented where we are in a circle and then we tell each other secrets, because you don't know what happened home last night, and we just wanted to have that environment where we felt safe with one another. So I decided this is my time to shine. And that day I decided to tell my friends that I'm living with HIV. And I remember the next days we had this sequence of sharing snacks together and sharing like one bottle of a large cool drink, because I mean, we're broke, we're kids. So we would all drink from the same bottle, and it stopped. I had my portion of snacks last, and they would leave the rest of the drink for me, and they excluded me from the hug tradition. I didn't know that was stigma and discrimination. I just thought maybe I was now the alpha of the group, and so they were giving me my portions last, and specifically for me. But that's not what it was. My friend, after a couple of weeks, came to me and said, we don't eat with you anymore like we used to, because you said that you are living with HIV, and you need to stop playing now. Come out and just tell us you are joking, because this is not nice. So I said, yeah, you're right. I'm not living with HIV. So when I told her that, this other Monday, when I came back to school, everything went back to normal. We were hugging, we're eating from the same packets. And I realized that, for a time like that, I denied my story because I also did not understand what it was that I was living with. And I had no answers for them. And we had nothing to teach each other. And at that time, when it was like a huge taboo, we could just leave our friendship and pretend an ignorance of what it was that was eating me in the background. So I grew up a very isolated child. I could have friends, but I wasn't really authentic in my relationships, because now I understood that this could deny me of friendships. So I had friends on the surface level, and we never went deep. But when I got to high school, I met a wonderful group of friends. And because in high school, living with HIV was now a really big struggle, because I'm growing up and all these conversations are now also expanding into the teenage part of my life. When I found out I was really young, I didn't have questions, and there wasn't really much to be curious about because I was young. But now I'm old, I have friends, and we are making all these dreams about our futures, the SWOT analysis, all of that. And I want to know how that fits and how that looks for my own life. So I told one of my friends, and from then they rewrote my story from what was shame to love. And what that taught me is that stigma cannot prosper when there's truth and when there's love. And after that, I went to the online community. Couple of months, I received so much and just love and support. And as time went on, the other people found my TikTok, and they had really interesting things to say, mean things, really things that would make me think. But at first, I wasn't really sad about it, because I used to say it gives me more things to talk about and to help other young people to get over like things that don't bother me. No one has ever said anything that I haven't said to myself. So no one can be cruel to me as I've been to myself. So I had that certain stubbornness. But like I mentioned, that recently I've heard things that I've never heard before that were violating my rights, and that felt different in my skin. it felt very uncomfortable. And at first I wanted to deny it. I was like, why is this making me uncomfortable that someone commented that I should be eliminated? And then I realized that it's because I'm human. And that's why I'm feeling it. And it's okay that I feel it. It's okay that I feel it. I don't have to be, hardcore about everything. Some things are really now really just that deep. And it changed my mindset. But on discrimination, on stigma, on being treated not so well for living with HIV, it's challenging. But love and acceptance from, other people, it tops everything. And yeah, nothing can measure to that. Thank you.
Axel, you've also had to deal with your fair share of telling your story publicly in a conservative society where there's religious people involved who would rather erase and invisibilize you, but you choose to reclaim your narrative. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's been like a journey, a process. When you get your HIV diagnosis, in most of the cases, and it was my case, of course, I felt really ashamed of who I was or who I am right now. I felt guilty and I felt dirty. I felt sedoso. I felt like no. And I think it was like a process for me to start saying like, who do you want to be, Axel? Like who is the Axel that you want to be in this society, and what's the Axel in relationship with the virus that you want to be, So I was like, if I don't take this is going to take me, If I don't take control of this situation is going to take control of me. And I think I was very lucky, and I'm still very lucky that my family has or is supporting me. And that means a lot to me, and I wish that support, that help can be also available for everyone, for every person who lives with HIV, because that gave me the power to say, I was going to say a bad word, but to say like, fuck it. This is my life, this is who I am, and I need to build a narrative that I want to show to the world about what it means to live with HIV. And I want to show to the world that HIV is something beyond of probably what people think, what the prejudices think, beyond the stigma. And something that I learned with my activism and with my life experience is that hate, discrimination, stigma is still there. And maybe it's going to be there for some years in the future. I would like it to not be there. In my utopia, in my mind, that should be eradicated, hate, stigma, discrimination. But probably it's going to be there for some years in the future. So I was like, I have another option. Either I continue feeling vulnerable or attacked by this, or either I start putting all my efforts and my energy to build community and to connect with others who, like me, share the same experience, and to raise my voice and to be visible. And I knew that it was going to be a little bit complicated, especially in Mexico, it's a really interesting country. You have the capital, which is Mexico City, which is very open. And you have the rest of the country, which is more conservative. So for me, it was like, I just need to take advantage of where I am. I was living in Mexico City, and I will take this narrative, and I will be visible. And yesterday I was telling Ben something that I want to share with you again. That is like, sometimes to be visible is for yourself, but also is for others, because then you can inspire others, at least, or not that or others may feel inspired by you and can also say like, I'm not alone, and probably one day I will do the same. And if everyone thinks about it, there's going to be a moment in which no one is going to stop us as community. So yeah.
That is beautiful. I want to leave it there. Thank you so much to the panel. You've been excellent. Please give them a big round of applause. Everybody take their seat. All right, we're coming on to the final bit of this. Ambassador, thank you. And we're going to talk about advancing human rights to end AIDS. We'll have a brand new set of speakers coming up here. But before that, I also have a special message from Liberian peace activist and Nobel Peace Prize winner, a women's rights activist, Lema Bowie.
Respect for human rights is the right of every person and a true cornerstone of peace. When we allow anyone's rights to be violated, a grave injury is done to each and every one of us. When we allow ourselves to be divided on the basis of ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, and turn against each other instead of turning towards each other, we all lose. When we stand up for each other as equals, when men stand up for the rights of women, when majority communities stand up for minority, we all become safer. Our world remains threatened by undefeated pandemics. That our world remains threatened by attacks on human rights is not a coincidence or two parallel or related challenges. Resilient, healthy society look out for every person. Human rights are universal and indivisible. So too is public health. I cannot be safe unless you are safe. When children are denied access to education information, when women are denied protection from violence, when minorities are denied equal treatment, public health is harmed. To protect everyone's health, we need to protect everyone's rights. And to protect everyone's rights, we citizens need to be courageous and stand up in solidarity with everyone.
All right, thank you for that. And for our final conversation on advancing human rights to end AIDS, I'm excited to bring up Ambassador Paul Bekkers, permanent representative of the Netherlands. Joining me on the stage here. I think the ambassador rented a crowd. A crowd of one, but it's bringing the energy of 100. Also joining us on stage is Jean Gapia Niyonzima, chair of the National Association for People Living with HIV in Burundi. Bienvenue. Joining us on the stage as well, Oliver Marcos, Secretary General of CECIDA in Spain. Ambassador, let's start with you because you're sitting right next to me and you have fabulous socks. Not too
You're doing
bad.
pretty good.
Thank you. The Netherlands, another big support of the work that the UNAIDS does, but also you support this message about human rights and the connection to unless human rights are protected, we cannot end AIDS. Your thoughts?
Okay, first, good afternoon, everybody, and my fellow panelists. Good to meet you. Thanks, by the way, for inviting me. I'm very honored and flattered. This is another remark I want to make because we are talking about things that need to still improve, and that's a lot. But I think we also should back a little bit. I mean, we've come a long, long way. If we look at where we were 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, where we are now, tremendous progress. So we should really face that. I mean, AIDS has changed. I mean, it's no longer, I mean, we have life-saving medication. A lot of progress has been made, even on a human rights-based approach. And so, I mean, we even have the ambition of 2030, HIV/AIDS should be eradicated, right? I mean, probably we won't be able to do so, but at least we have that ambition. We would never have had that 10 or 20 years ago. And then, of course, the question is, why are we not going to manage that in 2030? Are we doing something wrong? Maybe we're not doing enough. And I think the answer has been given by all the speakers before me. It's about the human rights-based approach. Yes, my colleague from Ireland also mentioned science-based evidence, science-based approach, but that's actually related. Human rights-based approach is fundamental. People have spoken about stigma and discrimination. And when I listened to them, to two previous speakers, reminded me of a story I want to share because it stuck with me the time I was a special ambassador for HIV/AIDS, which was 20 years ago or something like that. I was in Swaziland and I talked to a young lady, a young girl. She was 10, 12. She was supposed to go to school, but she didn't. She wasn't able to. Why? Because she had to take care of her mother. Her mother was HIV positive, and she was actually outcast from our community. She was separated physically, living alone, being ill, and the girl, the daughter, had to take care of her mother. And actually the girl was even avoided. She was discriminated against. And the little girl had to walk 3 times a day, 5 kilometers one way, 5 kilometers back, just to get water. That was all she was doing, taking care of her mother and making sure she could survive. She was not going to school. She did not have a good youth, simply because of the fact she has to take care of her mother, who was not allowed to get proper treatment, who had no access to any medication, who was not accepted by her community. And that was tremendously sad. For me, that was a learning experience and very much an insight how important it is to give people access to proper treatment, but also to allow them in the community and allow them to be accepted. Step away from stigma, step away from discrimination. Now, I didn't answer your question about the Netherlands. Very briefly, human rights-based approach has always been fundamental for us, and we're not the only ones. Some of my colleagues here, their governments have a similar policy. And also financially, I think that 10% of our ODA is spent to HIV/AIDS prevention, sexual reproductive health and rights. 10% of ODA, which is already 0.6% of the GDP. And that's because we believe it's extremely important. And in that, we focus very much on human rights. I don't want to take more of your time. Thank you, Larry, with your wonderful socks.
Thank you. Jeanne, you were the first person in Burundi who openly said that you were living with HIV at a time when that was a taboo. But that the organization you chair now, the National Association for Support for People Living with HIV Burundi, is based off your own work. When your baby was diagnosed and the doctor told you to get that baby out of the hospital, you've had to confront a priest telling you you're a sinner. Tell us about your story. En français ou en anglais? Okay. Okay, sure. Okay, so c'est bon.
C'est vrai, alors je fais partie de ces rescapés du VIH. Je vis avec le VIH depuis 38 ans. Comme vous le dites, je l'ai su quand mon bébé a été malade. Il a été hospitalisé et on a fait le test sans mon consentement ni le consentement de mon feu mari. Et après ça, on l'a chassé parce qu'il occupait un lit. Comme le médecin disait, il occupait un lit alors qu'il y a d'autres enfants qui pouvaient être traités. Donc, mon bébé est décédé à 18 mois, sans assistance. Je l'ai regardé impuissante. Il est décédé à la maison. À ce moment, j'étais enceinte. C'est une partie de moi que la grande majorité ne connaissent pas, malgré le fait que la grande majorité connaît mon histoire. Quand j'étais à l'hôpital, j'étais enceinte de mon deuxième bébé. On m'a demandé de faire l'interruption de la grossesse. Ça m'a pris 4 longs mois pour le faire. Et un autre médecin a décidé d'enlever mon matrice sans que je le sache. C'était un grand choc. On m'a pris ma féminité à l'âge tendre de 25 ans. Je peux vous dire que ça m'a pris beaucoup de temps pour que je reprenne à voir les gynécologues. Et en 1er décembre 1994, j'apprends qu'il y a une messe pour prier pour les personnes vivant avec le VIH. Chrétienne moi-même, je suis allée. Et le prêtre disait que les personnes qui sont décédées du VIH étaient des pécheurs. Je ne peux pas vous dire, je bouillonnais dans mon être, pas parce que je suis une sainte, mais parce que mon bébé était un saint. C'était un ange. Et je ne pouvais pas tolérer. Je me suis levée. C'est quelque chose qu'on ne peut pas imaginer. Aller devant et contredire un prêtre, c'est vraiment seulement une force d'une mère qui peut le faire. Je suis allée, j'ai dit je n'étais pas d'accord. Mon bébé était baptisé, il est décédé à 18 mois. Que bien que je ne sois pas une ange, je ne suis pas plus pécheresse que les autres. Et c'est le début de mon combat pour les droits humains, pour les droits, pour les personnes infectées, pour les personnes vulnérables, les LGBT. Et c'est à ce moment qu'on a commencé l'association qui est devenue aujourd'hui le symbole de la lutte pour les droits, pour les personnes infectées. Je suis aujourd'hui heureuse d'être la maman des jeunes, des moins jeunes, blancs, noirs, toutes personnes confondues. La maman où je me bats pour que les jeunes, Patrick, un de mes enfants qui s'est battu pour avoir des bons résultats, un orphelin du sida, et qui a eu une bourse pour aller en Algérie, il s'est vu refuser parce qu'il est infecté. J'ai été veuve, je sais ce que c'est être une veuve. Je me bats pour que les veuves gardent leur dignité. Je me suis remariée, bien évidemment, avec un bel homme qui est derrière là-bas. Une autre victoire. C'est une autre victoire parce que être une veuve et être une veuve vivant avec le VIH, ce n'est pas évident. On ne se remarie pas. J'aimerais, pour finir, dire que les personnes vivant avec le VIH ne sont pas un problème, nous sommes la solution. Aujourd'hui, l'ANSS a démontré qu'on peut faire la différence. Aujourd'hui, nous nous battons pour les LGBT. On m'a traité de lesbienne, je m'en fous, hein, mais je sais ce que c'est la discrimination et je ne tolère pas qu'on discrimine qui que ce soit. Et la lutte contre le sida, c'est sûr, on pourrait venir à la fin en 2030, y arriver, mais ça passera par le respect des droits des personnes, toutes personnes sans exclusion. Merci.
Oliver is from Spain, and she talks about exclusion and making sure that everyone has a right to healthcare, like we were talking about. Your own story is related to the work that you do, about coming out, about sharing your HIV diagnosis and facing discrimination, and the work you do now with healthcare with other people who also are excluded from the healthcare system, who risk not receiving treatment. Tell us your story.
Thank you, Larry. Hola a todas. Hi to all of us. I was thinking all the morning about this moment because I think how I can explain my story in only 2 minutes. What's the importance of my story, and I think now I understand the importance of this moment because our life have the energy and the power of the response of HIV. First of all, who I am Oliver. I'm from Spain. I am an HIV activist in CECIDA, the Spanish coordinator of HIV and AIDS, and I received my diagnostic 6 years ago. I received my diagnostic, a diagnostic of AIDS in Spain, in a country of the global north. And I think it's very important because more people think that HIV and AIDS it's only a trouble and infection in the South Global, in poor country. And the virus doesn't understand of frontiers. When I listen the sentence, you are HIV positive, I feel scared. And I thought that I will die early because the disinformation of the society, I think that the HIV and AIDS, it's the same situation that 30 years ago, and I die early and I am be illness. And after that, a new life began. A new life with a new partner, the stigma. The stigma is an idea created by society. It's a bad idea that causes many people fear shame and feel loneliness when receive a diagnosis of HIV and AIDS, a trouble of health. And I think it's stigma is my new partner, a lovely partner. And in that moment, I needed to speak with another young people because I think I don't know anyone young people in Spain that speak that is HIV positive, and I think it's the only young man in Spain that is in this situation. But after a long time, I understood that the stigma causes silence in young people today, because if I have a treatment, I have a normal life, why I need to speak about HIV in my life? And I think today I live more years with the notice of the HIV and with the stigma, and it's more heavy for me to do a normal life with that notice, because all people know me with this reality. I think many young people claim that are good. We are a good life. We are a good health, I think, in many countries. And I think our lives, our experience, our feelings, and the same voice, the voice of the sexual freedom, the voice of the gender equality, the voice of one health, one global health, and the voice of the human rights. 6 years later, I am here taking the right path to defend the human rights, because the response of HIV and AIDS is the defense of the human rights. And HIV also means human, also being life, and also mean respect for all people in the world. Thank you so much.
From Jean and Oliver, I want to hear from your current work. I wonder if Burundian society has changed from when you're fighting these fights, if preachers are more inclusive or more understanding, if healthcare providers don't make life-changing decisions without your input anymore. How has life changed in the years since you've been doing this work?
Comme je dis, en fait, les prêtres sont des êtres humains. C'est un individu, c'est pas tous les prêtres. On trouve des prêtres stupides, je peux dire. Mais ce que je trouve qui est bien, c'est qu'au moins, il m'a laissé parler. Il pouvait me chasser. Souvent, on me dit, est-ce que tu peux nous dire ce prêtre, qui c'est ce prêtre? Je dis, c'est pas nécessaire. Le plus important, c'est que moi, je le connais, il a changé. Il n'a pas eu le courage de dire, c'est moi qui l'ai dit, et c'est pas moi qui vais le dire. Ça a changé, nous avons des prêtres. Je me bats pour les droits des homosexuels parce que pour ceux qui ont connu le feu Georges Kanoma, qui m'a amené dans cette lutte, et Yves Yomp, c'est quand Georges Kanoma est décédé, moi je suivais mon mari au Gabon, qui était le directeur ONU-SIDA au Gabon, et j'ai pris le premier avion parce qu'on voulait même pas faire la messe pour ce jeune homme. J'ai appelé l'évêque. Je lui ai dit, il s'appelait Georges. Ça veut dire qu'il était baptisé. Et on ne veut pas lui faire une messe. Ça va être un scandale. 30 minutes après, on a eu quelqu'un. Donc, c'est dire, en fait, c'est un combat de tout le temps. Mais pour moi, ce qui m'est arrivé, ça fait longtemps, même si je suis quand même jeune, n'est-ce pas? OK. Tu es sûr?
Oui.
D'accord. Okay. Ce qui m'est arrivé, c'était pour une raison, peut-être pour que je puisse me défendre aussi les autres. Quand on défend des choses qu'on a vécues, on met plus de force. Et je dis toujours, c'est vrai, sûrement, je n'aurais pas choisi d'être infectée. Mais aujourd'hui, quand je regarde ce que ça a fait, comment je m'approche des gens que je n'aurais jamais été voir, je me dis peut-être c'est pas si mal. Donc, ce qui est arrivé les années 80, c'était aussi de l'ignorance. Mais par contre, ce qui arrive aujourd'hui, et ce qui fait mal, c'est que nous, les premières années, moi, je passais dans des aéroports, on me dit, mais pourquoi on ne met pas les personnes infectées quelque part et on les enferme? Je dis, mais où est-ce qu'on va vous mettre, vous? Il dit, mais moi, vous ne voyez pas, moi, je suis bien. Je dis, et moi? Ah, vous êtes... Bon, j'étais encore jeune, enfin, bien, je suis encore jeune, mais là, c'était plus jeune encore. On te dit, mais toi, non, toi, c'est bon. Parce qu'on regardait par le physique, on se disait, tu es bien portant. C'était ça. Le grand souci, c'est que les populations clés sont en train de vivre exactement ce que nous avons vécu il y a plus de 30 ans. Nous avons perdu beaucoup de temps. Nous avons perdu beaucoup de personnes parce qu'on avait le déni dans nos pays, plusieurs de nos pays. On disait le VIH, ça ne concerne que des homosexuels et sans qu'il n'y en a pas. Et nous avons perdu du temps. Aujourd'hui, malgré tout ça, nous sommes en train de vivre la même chose pour des pays qui sont en train de criminaliser ce qu'on aurait fait aussi pour les personnes infectées, même si on n'a pas criminalisé. Il y a même des pays qui ont criminalisé les personnes infectées. Ce qui est dommage, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, en 2024, 42 ans après, nous sommes en train de vivre encore une fois cette maladie qui tue le plus, qui est le déni et la discrimination. Encore une fois, on ne pourra pas y arriver si nos dirigeants, si nous tous, toutes, chacun a une responsabilité. Parfois, on te dit, mais tu as été courageuse, tu as dit, mais pourquoi les autres n'ont pas dit? Je dis, mais est-ce que là où tu es, l'environnement, toi, tu as créé un environnement favorable pour que les personnes le disent? Le plus important, ce n'est pas d'être open et de le dire. C'est le plus important, c'est de prendre ses responsabilités et de savoir vivre positivement son statut, de se protéger, de protéger les autres. C'est le plus important. Mais l'environnement, ça nous concerne. Nous, tous, chacun, chacune, mais à commencer par nos dirigeants.
I love her intersectional approach to human rights because especially in our part of the world, making sure that you include everyone, the LGBTQ community in societies where their very existence is criminalized is so powerful, as you in this room will know. Ambassador. After, yes, I wanted to speak to Axel first, because you run an organization that works with universities and young people, giving them the right information about HIV and how to protect themselves. How's that going? Why did you get into it?
a good question and a difficult answer.
In the shortest words possible.
Yeah.
No pressure.
I think almost in Spain, young people is the mainly gay population because young people haven't received any sexual education in our lives. And I always say that the same. I have a treatment for my HIV infection, but I don't have a treatment for the discrimination.
Right.
I need a pill to fight against the stigma. And it's the solution of all my problems because many young people don't know the difference between HIV and AIDS, doesn't know the risk practice and the transmission of HIV. And many young people think that doesn't meeting anything with HIV. And I say, hi, I'm here. But I think in Spain, there are 150,000 people with HIV, and it's more people, more silenced people in an European country with a public health system. And young people need to know our lives for health, for promote healthcare in their lives, and don't wait to an infection, any STDs. Before that, I will care my health. I will love my body, my health, my sexual practice, my pleasure, and all that. And I need to take the control of my health before I feel an illness or any trouble.
All right, wonderful. And Ambassador, you have the final word.
Thank you very much.
No
Thanks for.
pressure.
I enjoy pressure. No, but listening to my fellow panelists, I would think the following: human rights are universal, but I think the approach to fight HIV/AIDS is also universal, and I mean that we have to include all of us to be effective. And in my humble experience, we have very good experience. We have very good experience with having people with living with HIV/AIDS, living with HIV, I should say, the communities, the private sector, even the church, governments, and the international community, the UN family, working together, trying to see where everybody's added value is. If you do so, you can have a tremendous success. And I would also wish for all of us, for the couple of years ahead, to have that approach commonly, human rights based, but also together, knowing exactly where added value is. And I want to congratulate UNAIDS because I briefly saw the report. By the way, it's a great organization, Larry. It's a wonderful report, so congratulations to that. Thank you for giving me the floor again.
All right, thanks a lot. That same energy, but let's thank the entire panel, Jean, Oliver, and Ambassador one more time. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Yes. Oh, please come back and take a photo now that you're still here. We're done. We have just one more thing and then we are gonna get out of your hair. And the best part, we have the refreshments coming right up. So stay with us. All right, I'll tuck it in my stomach.
Thank you.
Awesome. And my job here is only to welcome back Christine, the Deputy Executive Director of UNAIDS, to wrap us up.
Thank you very much. And I'm still not the last thing between you and refreshments, but I promise you it will be very short. I first of all want to thank all the panelists, and I'm not going to summarize what any of them said. I think you have heard their words of wisdom. So thank you to all of you for speaking to us. I also want to thank Larry, and he got himself some applause in anticipation. I think now we can give him some applause in appreciation. I wanted to say a couple of things. Volker Turk reminded us that our global AIDS response was always built on global solidarity. Ambassador Beckers reminded us how far we have come. And when we hear stories such as Jean's, we know how far we have come. But I think what all of you have talked about, including member states, Spain, Ireland, Brazil, others who have spoken, is yes, we still need that global solidarity. But what we have also started doing in 30 years is building community, whether it's Namonde's community, whether it's anybody's, it's the global community, but also your community where you are. And I wanted to say, just how impressive it is when you hear Jean, and I have been privileged to see her work in Burundi. This is where you see when it was about the rights of people living with HIV, how it is extended to the people that are now the most marginalized in your community. And I've seen how warm you are, how open you are, how you have opened your center to the drug users community, the sex worker community, the LGBTI community. And that is exactly the community that we need for that last mile, as others have said, where maybe now it is not just about people living with HIV, but it is in many countries, those that are most marginalized. And I think if you haven't heard about the work that Jean does, please speak to her or see it online. I'm sure it's online somewhere, because it's exactly that feeling of you are not alone. And as long as your rights are being denied, my rights are being denied. So I think we have heard amazing stories about that this afternoon. So thank you, all of you, for telling your stories, for being vulnerable, and for sharing. I want to introduce the last person for the night, which is a brilliant spoken word poet from Nigeria, Hafi, who has come here. She's a young feminist activist poet from Nigeria who has written a personal poem for us, which she will give us in a second. And after the poem, we will conclude the event and invite all of you in the foyer, I think, in the foyer to have some refreshments, and hopefully for all of you to get a chance to speak one-on-one to each other so that we can continue to build the community that we need to end AIDS by 2030 as a public health threat. Over to you, Hafi.
The day my mother died of AIDS was not the end of her suffering. The day my mother died of AIDS was not the end of her suffering. Her name remained the same, for fame tainted with shame. Her judgment lived on in the harsh gossips on the lips of her community. And no one remembered her for her humanity. The day my mother died of AIDS was not the end of her suffering. Her room was gloom with grief, but the air was lit with relief. Her burial was brief, and her killers came to pay their final respect. And as they leave, their prejudice was louder than their footfall. And that should be the start of my downfall. But before I fall, let it be known that I gave my all. Let it be known that I would have fought for my life, fought my strife, fought my treacherous inclination, fought with medication, fought even suicidal ideation. Let it be known that this deceased died from a disease even deadlier than AIDS. The kind that feeds on the mind and makes the heart blind, makes you unkind, the kind that neglects the body and devours the soul whole. Let it be known that the virus is not the killer in this case. So let's cut the chase. Now that the elephant had not only been invited into the room, but had been allowed to join the conversation, let it be known. Like my mother, I would have lost the fight to stigmatization, lost to discrimination and rejection. Let it be known that the virus did not aid my humiliation. The virus did not disown me or embarrass me or throw me out of my father's house. The virus did not abandon me at the altar or ridicule my gender or ask how I got it. Let it be known that HIV did not kill me. Ignorance did. The ignorance of unseen scars and silent tears. The ignorance that had failed to shush the negative song the positive term is playing in our heads. The ignorance that had failed to allay the dread and stop the spread. The ignorance that focuses on the meds with charisma but had failed to stop the stigma. And on this race for life, for growth, for the future, I hope we're running on the right path. the human rights part. The part that does not only invest in medication, but invest in the right to education and sensitization against stigmatization. The rights parts that invest in the right to inclusion, in healthcare, in the law of a share, invest in equity for women and girls, invest in a future where we can all collectively play our parts, a future that we can all collectively join the queue to save a life or two, a future that begins with me and you. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy for that. I don't know they carry last. That's it, we're done. Thank you so much for being out here. Spread the words and enjoy refreshments out there.
Thank you for sharing. And that was beautiful. Beautiful.